Okay, cool. We are live. Yay for episode 20 of the Audacious Explorer. Hello, Katie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. And you? I'm so grateful to have you today live with us.
Well, thank you. I'm very, very grateful to be here. This is awesome.
Yes. So Katie is a growth strategist and business coach who is dedicated to helping women take their business to the stratosphere. I'm really curious how you came up with this unique selling proposition for your business. We're gonna spend time today talking to Katie about all sorts of stuff that she's doing. So basically, she's in charge of Biz Women Rock, which is both a podcast, her business, and a group where you are basically serving the women that are a part of your tribe.
Yep. Yeah. It is awesome. So yeah, I've had Biz Women Rock since 2014, and it started as a podcast, and then it really gave birth to an entire business, just like you said. And it's where I get to kind of step into what I love doing, which is helping women do what they want to do through their businesses. So it is so much fun.
I'm really curious, actually. How did you start, Katie? Like, what is your background?
I have no MBA. I have no official credentials to be a business owner. But what I do have is I have, I kind of learned through the school of hard knocks, they say. So back in 2008, I started writing a book that I decided to self-publish. And it's not worth mentioning because the book no longer exists because it was just a really bad book at the time. But I at some point I was writing this book and I was like, I really need to not be around other authors. I really need to be around other business owners because I need to know how to sell this book. I need to know how to let this book let me be an entrepreneur. And and I ignorantly thought that book, that one, I think $37 or $47 book, was within 4 months going to give me the income that I needed to be able to quit my job and live the entrepreneurial freedom lifestyle. Fast forward, what happened is through that search for entrepreneurs, I ended up stumbling across a local community called the Tampa Bay Business Owners. And it had just been started by the handsome Greek guy that is now my husband. He and I became really close. We established a really strong friendship right away. Got together as a couple, and immediately I sort of started helping him in his business, just like kind of being the helpful girlfriend. And I had, some corporate training. So I was sort of going into the startup going, okay, what are your processes for this? And what are your sales metrics for this? And where's your marketing collateral? And so I very quickly realized okay, he's got a business model already that's working. Let's go forward with that. If we both put our energies into that, then we will come out the other end faster than if I just try to start from scratch with this book. So very quickly, I quit my job.
What was the book about?
It was about how to find your true love. It was actually it was a really good book. It was really fun book to write. And it was literally the step-by-step, the formula, and how I was attracting in the perfect man in my life. And I finished the book, and then my husband and I got together, and I never went back to rewrite. I know, so stupid. I never went back to rewrite that beautiful ending. So I tried a couple times. It just didn't happen. And, I was on to a different thing. So anyway, so he and I co-owned that company for a total of 7 years. We both ran it for a total of 7 years. He still has that company. I'm no longer in the dailies, but it was a community for entrepreneurs. So it looked like a networking group. It looked like a chamber of commerce, but it was just for business owners. And so we put together education, masterminds, facilitated membership, making sure that they had an experience that helped them connect with each other in a space that feels really lonely sometimes. So I literally lived and breathed entrepreneurship through the services that we were providing. And then myself was actually getting this education behind the scenes on how to actually grow this business. And so my role in that company was as chief operating officer. So it literally was taking 10 steps and turning them into 2. How can we make sure, what is the experience from a new member from start to finish? How are we getting people to the event? And, how are we being productive with that? So fast forward, then late 2013 came around, and one of the people that we had brought in to teach, because we brought in so many educators to teach about like innovative topics that entrepreneurs needed to know. One of the topics was podcasting. And it sparked the interest of my husband, which sparked the interest of me. And lo and behold, you know, a couple months later, at the beginning of 2014, I launched the podcast Biz Women Rock with no idea what in the world I was going to do with it. I literally just launched it because I had always been super passionate about women and like the beauty and strength and like massive genius of women and this idea of us lifting each other up. And I was, by that time, you know, 6 or 7 years into totally identifying as an entrepreneur, loving that lifestyle, loving everything that it represented. And I was like, well, I just want this to be the marriage of those two things. And let me see what happens. So that's kind of, you know, how Biz Women Rock then started.
Okay, I really like that you are very, very passionate about women empowerment, and this is something that I deeply resonate with. I get this question quite often: why only women? And do you feel that by serving only women, you are leaving like 50% of the population uninvolved with your business?
So if the practical answer to that is that's smart business. It's called niching down. And so in smart business owners realize and are very clear and specific about who their gifts best serve. And sometimes that looks like a very specific demographic. Sometimes like it looks like a very specific quality of person, level of person, industry of person. For me, it looked like a gender, and I don't see it as kind of turning my back to another group of, you know, the whole other side of the population, because I just feel like that's where I shine, and I want to continue to shine there. And I'm really big into like, find your gifts and keep leaning into those gifts. And I'm going to say all this and also say, from a heart-centered standpoint, you know, my content is, I have male listeners. I have people who listen to my podcast who are men. I have people who want to join my group like crazy that are men, and I won't let them join. I have people who hire me to coach them and to help strategize on their business growth that are men. And I say yes to them. And that's great, because I ultimately believe in like helping the entrepreneur. But when it comes to what's outwardly facing and what really lights me on fire, it's really the women, because we as women have a very unique, not better or worse, but just a very unique way of being in this world. And I identify with it. So it's an easy niche for me to serve. So the practical answer is it's smart business, niching down. And my niche just happens to be women ambitious. By the way, it's not just women entrepreneurs. It's ambitious women entrepreneurs who are already in business, who just want to do more. They want to grow more. They want to have more. They want to experience more. They want to do better. And they're never going to stop doing that. So that's my quick answer. And I have had men call me out and say, WTF, why can't I be on your podcast? That's sexist. And I'm like, no, that's actually smart business. And every once in a while I will have a man on if it's like a specific topic that I know they are the experts in, but it's few and far between. So, you know, it's my business. I get to do what I want.
Yes, I think that this is the short answer, actually. Yeah. Okay, so I hear you starting offline, right? So when you were working with your husband, it was mostly serving people offline, and then you slowly transgressed into the online world, starting with your podcast?
Yeah,
right.
Starting with my podcast. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so now you are organizing masterminds that are both online and offline, and basically I feel that you are more congruent with being called a teacher, right? So you are like more of a teacher than what you used to identify as business-wise.
Yeah, most definitely. And yes, the beauty of kind of coming from the offline space or the live space to the online space is there are so many awesome things that happen in a live interaction, in a live training, in a live networking event, and like hugging people. Like there's so much of that if you don't know how to create that for an online space, I think that's one of the reasons why my Facebook group is really thriving, and why my online communities, like, you know, my masterminds for the most part are virtual, and the education is virtual, but like I'm constantly bringing the best of what made the live event so special into that. Yeah, I definitely have transitioned from sort of being a COO to being a teacher, a leader of a community. I consider myself somebody who's like simultaneously a leader, a strategist, a teacher, a facilitator. And my job is to constantly reflect the light back into every single woman who I have the privilege of standing in front of, and allow them to reflect the light in each other. So, when I'm clear about that, I know kind of what my offerings are, what, my program should be, because I know that that's where my gifts really lie.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm like listening to the spiritual side of you, because I feel that you are a person who is very successful and very organized and very business driven. And at the same time, you have this, I'm leading with the heart and creating the space for women to shine their light. And I love what you said. Oh my God, about you having the privilege to have one of the people that you are serving in front of you. I think that's very humble, and it's absolutely empowering to hear you say that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I've been watching a lot of Kung Fu Panda lately because that's what my 2-year-old daughter's in. And they have like the yin yang sign like throughout the whole movie. And it keeps resonating with me. It's going to show up somewhere in my brand, I know eventually, but that's exactly how I feel. And I think that there's never been a better time in business that is open armed to allow both of those things to coexist and allow, in practical terms, it's sort of like a personal brand and a business brand. But in larger terms, that really means like having a practical side to what you're doing and in having this more holistic version of why you do that and how that shows up and how that turns up in your speech. Like we live in a time where like those words, like speaking about the universe and things resonating with you, like that stuff would never get talked about 10 years ago. And now it's like totally part of the speech. Yeah. And the great part about that is that I attract women into my space that resonate with that and that feel that, because I approach business as a very holistic experience versus somebody else who might talk about the ABCs and the practicalities of business. And that's never going to be just what I do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that this is where a part of the answer for the question about women comes in, right? It's also a certain type of language that you would use in a more female-driven context.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious about your brand. You just told me that something that makes your brand so unique is the fact that you were able to translate what was happening live into what is happening online. So what are the specific things of that? How do you feel that you are fueling online?
I'll give you a couple of specific examples. So one of the most powerful things about a live event or some sort of in-person class or workshop or, event is that you get to look people in the eyes. You get to know them deeper than just a virtual hello, right? So I am always thinking about how can I make sure to deepen the relationships with the women in my community. So 2 very specific spaces that I'll talk about. I have a private Facebook group with over 5,000 women entrepreneurs in there. It's a free group. And then I have a paid membership community called the Biz Women Rock Academy that has probably about 50 women in there. And just a couple of the ways that I insert it into what I do. So the Academy members, one of the things that I provide for them is every single week we have some sort of education or masterclass or case study, or I'm showing them behind the scenes. So like there's constant education that I'm curating for them. One big event that we have a month has nothing to do with education. It's called our virtual happy hour. And it's like, hey, we have an hour every single month. We are showing up. Bring your cocktail if you want to, bring your coffee if you want to, but there's no business agenda other than we're getting to know each other outside of our social media, profile pictures. And it's really powerful. I can't even tell you how powerful it seems. So trivial in this day and age where like online, I'm supposed to come in, get what I need and get out. And so I really see that as one way where I incorporate that deep relationship building, and so much good stuff happens just from that virtual networking event. And then in my larger community, in my Biz Women Rock private group, I mean, I'm constantly connecting people with each other. I definitely did that live here a lot. It was like, hey, oh, I'm talking to you. Oh, have you met so-and-so? You need to talk. I literally do that exact same thing within our group. I tag people. Hey, Tina, you need to get in on this comment. Hey, you're awesome over here. What do you think? And that's just one example of how I do it. And I will also, one big thing that, is very obvious in a live setting is making each individual person feel super special. So in a live setting, you can do that. I did that so much by giving every single person coming to our events super big hugs. Like I'm that person, right? I can't necessarily do that online. So I'll just give you this example. There's no, automated way that I do this, but every once in a while, if there's a woman who is asking a question in our Facebook group, I literally will get on a Facebook Live and answer her question. I will call her out and I will say, hey, Jane, you asked this question. I want to give you the answer to this. And what do you think? And I hope that this helps. And ladies, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. And it's just one way to make that one person feel really special in a group of 5,000 plus people. So if you can do that well, and continue to show up to do that every day and make every individual who's a part of your community in some way feel special, that's what this game is all about. And that's what a live event does really well that isn't translated very easily into the online space.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, because what I feel is happening in a lot of groups is that we are automating this, we are scheduling these messages, right? So like every Monday is this, and this is where the human dimension of the virtual community is lost, right? But right here, basically creating engagement, and as you said, creating value, even if it's very specific driven value for that individual to feel that they are seen and they are appreciated and they actually have the space inside Biz Women Rock.
Totally. There within that Facebook group, I only automate one post a week, and it's my same Promote Your Biz Thursday post, right? Literally every other time that I'm posting is me live doing it, because I want to force myself to constantly be there and be present with everyone in there. And I'm reading and I'm commenting, and it sounds like it's a lot of work, but that's the human connection. And if you really want to build a quote unquote online business, you've got to get out of this thought process that everything gets to be automated, because that's, if you're building a business that depends on relationships, then you better get the idea that relationships themselves and depths of relationships cannot be automated to a certain extent. So it requires a lot of like showing up with heart and showing up with your time, just like you would at an event.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. I love the fact that you are creating value, but also investing and infusing a lot of value in your group, because it can only grow from there.
Yep, exactly.
So we were talking about, like, you have a lot of hats, right? You're a mom and you're a wife and you're a daughter and you're a sister and you're an entrepreneur. So how is it that you are creating space for all these roles in your life? And are you doing it successfully? Do you feel that you can accomplish them all?
So the answer is yes, I actually do feel like I'm doing them successfully. And I will share some very practical tips on this, because I talk about this a lot. I sort of call it like mastering your schedule, like master your schedule, master your life. I schedule the hell out of my life, and I do it very purposefully. And a practical tip that I can start with is that I create an ideal week, for example, according to what my values are. So if I value time with my daughter, if I value time with my husband, if I value time for my health, I schedule it in my calendar. Like I pre-book appointments in my calendar to have that time. And I value work. Value is a big work for me. That is not a separate, like, oh, I, go to work and ho hum. Like, I love what I do. So I schedule that time. So I have a 2-year-old daughter. She goes to school 3 days a week. So if you honestly ask me how many hours per week I work, it's anywhere between 24 to 30 hours a week. And I feel like I have a pretty darn successful business. And I get to stay at home with my daughter 2 days out of the work week. That's part of the gig. So the point being is that I lay the foundation of where my values lie and what I want to do. And then I get deep into, okay, how am I going to then organize that time? So, this has forced me to get really good with what am I scheduling, and what are the things I have to do in my business versus kind of the busy work that I can either just let go of right now and not be great at, and that needs to be okay, or I can delegate it out to somebody on my team. For those of you who don't have a team quite yet, could just be like, I'm going to kind of put that in the bucket of I don't need to be perfect at that quite yet. And we're going to let it go. There was a time not so long ago that I was really crappy at email, like really bad. And it just did not take priority in certain ways, right? So the practical things are starting with your values first, creating sort of like what an ideal week looks like for you. And then, really backing into batching content, like, okay, where in the week would I be ideal to create blog posts or podcast episodes or, do these interviews or whatever it is? Like, let me batch that stuff. So on Monday afternoons, boom, can I fit in, 1, 2, or 3 podcast interviews? And then boom, I've got 3 weeks worth of content and it's done. I'm done. So there's a lot of that, like, my background as the COO came in here, which is like, how can I take 10 steps and make them into 2? And that's pretty much how I organize a life where I work 3 days a week happily.
Yeah. So you're mentioning, like, I love the fact that you got probably good at scheduling because there was a need for that, right? But at the beginning, you might have a lot of struggles and a lot of challenges. So how rocky was the beginning of your entrepreneur life and how did you manage it?
Oh boy, girl. I ain't gonna lie. I'll start with a foundational belief that I have come to learn that in the beginning, when I first jumped into my then boyfriend, now husband's company that became our company, I really believed that success was a destination. And if I just worked hard enough and long enough and sweated enough and, struggled enough, I would eventually get to that destination, which for me back then looked like X amount of dollars paying all my bills that I don't have to rely on a job for. That's sort of like, generally speaking, what most people think, right? Mm-hmm. I have come to learn that there is no such thing as a destination. If you are really going to take on this life as an entrepreneur, it's so cliche, but it is so ridiculously true. It is literally about progress and the journey. And how am I showing up better every single day? And how am I accepting the fact that I am totally going to mess the heck up over and over again, sometimes publicly and embarrassingly, and sometimes privately and in a puddle of tears on the floor. And then how am I going to get back up and figure it out? So you asked me what it looked like. It looked like that. Like there were, and I need to make sure it's clear. I'm almost a decade into being an entrepreneur, and I still have those moments of like, this isn't working. So you just get I know, I can't figure it out. So, the probably the best piece of advice that I ever got is just like, take it one step at a time. Like, I think in the early years, I really, again, with that same mindset back then was like, I have to have all the pieces perfectly and the plan perfect and the process perfect before I go implement. Mm-hmm. And the fact of the matter is that while I don't think it should be the opposite either, I don't think you should just jump in and not have a plan all the time. There's a nice middle ground called how can I create a good enough plan and a good enough idea of what my next best steps are, and then take action and then figure it out along the way. So, it wasn't pretty. And especially with that scheduling thing, the moment I became pregnant, that was like the light under my butt to be like, I got to figure this out. Like I was pretty good with it before then, but like the moment I became pregnant and the moment I had a baby, I was like, okay, I do not like feeling in chaos. I like feeling like organized. I'm a little bit of a control freak. So I kind of feel like I kind of want to know what's going on. And it just developed, like my way of organizing my days just developed over time and me practicing and experimenting with things. I constantly do like a 7-day challenge with myself. Like, let me try, I'm about to do this new thing. Let me try it for 7 days and see how it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it doesn't. And here's the beauty of that. It totally releases all of the pressure for having to change everything forever. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I literally just did this with my schedule. About a month ago, I was like, you know what? I'm going to change my daughter's school schedule from 3 days a week, like 3 long days a week, to like 4 short days a week. And I was like, okay, I moved everything around. I kind of like switched up a bunch of stuff. And a week and a half into it, I was like, this sucks. I do not like this. This does not work for me. And so I changed it all back. And that's it's like self-awareness. Like literally, I think the core concept probably in this entire conversation is being truly honest with who you are and being willing to explore internally to know what your right answers are, or your best right answers for the moment, you know? And I think that when you get really clear on who you are, you know the compass. And so you know when something fits, you know when it's off, you know when it doesn't feel good, and you're willing to give yourself a lot of grace when you took that direction because it seemed like the right thing and it just really wasn't.
Yeah. And being able to actually act on that and like drop the things that are draining you. Because many of us, and like I am totally there, you're going to say, I feel that I'm missing out if I'm not fulfilling that what I started doing, which is actually not paying off in the long run, because I'm just like investing time and energy in something that will never see the light probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess for you, it was all about creating this resilience and like learning little, like making baby steps. Because at the beginning, it's not something that you naturally want to do as an entrepreneur.
No. In the beginning, we want to have all the right pieces from all the master classes and all the podcasts we've listened to and all the experts are telling us, and we need to have all that in play perfectly before we begin. And if we don't do it perfectly, we're worthless and we're not doing it right. And it does us a disservice because it holds us back from what we can truly do. So my advice is just get into action, make the best right decision in the moment that you possibly can, and just take action.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, because I think that it's very, very important to like really, really emphasize this key word, which is action, because many of us are very good at ideation, like the ideation and the planning. But when it comes to taking massive action, we become paralyzed, right? Because, well, what if we fail? Mihai, hey, Mihai. Mihai has a question for you, Katie.
Bring it on.
What was the moment you realized that your business is a success, and did you have some turning points?
Great question. I'm going to talk about Biz Women Rock as it pertains to this, because Biz Women Rock, even though I had been an entrepreneur, that was an entirely new endeavor, and I was brand new into it, basically. So the answer is, again, staying away from this idea that there's a moment in time when it all clicks. There is not one moment where I was like, oh, it's successful. However, I will tell you that there have been two moments over the past 2 years or 4 years that Biz Women Rock has been around that have been incredibly grounding in confirming that the path that I was on was the right path. The very first moment was about 2.5 years into Biz Women Rock. And super quick story is that for 2.5 years, or for about 2 years, I basically worked our local company that took up about 90% of my time. And then Biz Women Rock, this podcast community thing I was building, really got 10% of my time. So I don't actually consider that like when I was 100% of my business, because I wasn't. So, and then I had a baby. And then all of a sudden, my kid's 9 months old. I have this thriving community. I have a podcast that I'm putting out regularly. At that point, I've sort of tried a couple of things, but I didn't really know what I was doing or what I was all about or what the brand was all about. So I actually took myself on what I call a Katie retreat. And I literally talk about like doing self-exploration and like getting super clear. I literally took myself on this 2 days away without my daughter, without my husband, and just started asking myself a ton of questions of what's important to me? What do I love about what I do? What do I want? Who do I best serve? Like, according to where I am right now, like I just got really clear on what this was. Do I actually love some of this stuff? What am I doing that I don't love? What am I doing that I do love? And let me lean more into that. That moment got me ridiculously fired up about what the next phase of my business was, because I got it. I was like, okay, I'm on to something, and I know it. And here's what I love to do. And here's what I know I can do more of. So that was one moment. That was about mid 2016. So not that long ago. And then fast forward to not that long ago, about October 2017. So at the time of this recording, we're, 4 months ago, 3-4 months ago. Yeah. And I had a low moment again, where I was sort of like confused and like, I've been doing all this really great work. I've been having quote unquote success, but what am I really doing here? And it was another moment of like feeling a little chaotic, doing a lot of that comparison thing, doing a lot of like, this is not as big and it's not good enough. So again, I did the same kind of a thing. I didn't go on a Katie retreat per se, but like I literally just got really quiet for a couple of days. I journaled. My husband happened to be away that weekend, and I journaled the heck out of what I was here to do. Like, what am I here to do? Like, what do I really love? Again, same concept. What do I really love? What do I want to do more of? What is working? What's not working? Who are these women that I have the privilege of serving, and are they the right women? Yes. Okay. Well, how can I better serve them? And so it just got me again, super clear and powerfully connected to my why. And so, I would tell you, asking the question, the more often you can get in touch with your why, the more moments that you'll know that you're on the right path, and I consider that success. Like if I know I'm on the right path, that's success,
Yeah. So I heard you using journaling as a tool to gain more clarity. And I feel that that's something that is very, very helpful for many of us. Yeah.
I'm going to plug a client of mine. She's an artist and makes these great journals with her art, but I fill up so many of these. I used to be a typer journaler, and now I'm just a handwritten journaler. I talk a lot about a journaling process, purposeful journaling. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I heard you mentioning something also very interesting. So like, how do you deal with these moments when you get all the, I am not enough, and the comparison? I love comparison. Wow, this person is doing that. Should I also be doing that? So all these things kind of pop up normally. I think that in many individuals, all individuals probably go through this. I feel that it's very draining for entrepreneurs. How do you deal with that? And how do you recognize when you've started spiraling already?
Yes. I love that you answered this question, because I love talking about this, and I love being super vulnerable about the fact that like I am not immune to this, and I still experience this. I was sick last week, and just the nature of being sick and like not in my routine, and like I started going down there. I was like, dude, enough. So yes, we all experience it. B, how do I actually deal with it? So number one, I just recognize my thoughts. Like I'm starting to feel like, oh, this anxiety. I recognize a big trigger for me is if I feel like anxious about the work that I'm doing. Like, I gotta do this. I gotta do this, because the answer to that question of like, why am I anxious is always like, I gotta keep up with the Joneses kind of a thing in business, right? I gotta look successful like that person does. And these ads look just like this. And so my ad should look like really. And so a couple of very practical things that I do is, if it gets really bad, like back, last year it did, I got spiraled down really, really deep, horribly. I literally went through and I blocked I stopped following people that I put in that space. Even if they were, I'm friends with them, or like, even if I actually love their content, like it doesn't matter. Like there's that whole thing of like, if you're really trying to eat healthy, like don't keep ice cream in your house 24/7. Like, make your space a sanctuary. So same thing, like unsubscribe from emails that, you're constantly thinking like, ooh, she's doing that. Ooh, that's a good idea. I should do that. Ooh, I wonder how her masterminds are going. I wonder how her coaching is going, what's going on in her group. So I got myself out of certain groups. I unsubscribed myself from certain people and, blocked certain content. So that's a very practical thing that I did. This is absolutely 100% the antidote to that. Start to tell your story, because no one else is you. And the more that you tell your story, I actually just had a podcast episode this week with Dawn Frazier about this. And she helps people tell their story very beautifully. And this idea of like, we as entrepreneurs have the privilege of telling our own story in our marketing. Like, we think marketing has to be like, do you have this pain? Then I've got the result and blah, blah, blah. Like, it doesn't have to be so scripted. Like, show up and tell your story is why that thing is so powerful to you. Like, what's this story that you've had that led you up to why you want to offer masterminds? Like no one has that story. No one. So the more you tell your story and the more you show up in your marketing telling the story, the more you even just tell your story to yourself, the more you tell your story to your friends, your inner circle, like you get reflected back at you why you're so darn amazing, and why when you truly do that, there's no such thing as competition, because you really have your own journey in this world that no one else has. I just finished reading The Alchemist I read it like 10 years ago, and then I just read it again a couple weeks ago. And it's this concept of like, you go on your own journey to fulfill your personal legend. And everyone has a personal legend. Everyone does. And so it's not your job to worry about anyone else's, even if they look like they're kind of going along the same path. Like, you have no competition. But the answer to that is to do more of you, like you be you, right? More of that. And the people who resonate with you are going to fly like flies to you. And those who don't are just going to be detracted. And great, awesome. Let them go to people who they really connect with. So I think that's like the overall, just be you.
Yeah, I hear you. But I think that is the most difficult thing that we are not really able to do, like really be who we are, and also like be able to embrace that fully and give ourselves out there as who we are. I think it's very empowering what you're saying, and I would love to hear your story, because I was telling you that I could not find your story online.
I know. Oh, well, I have a gazillion stories depending on what what we're talking about. But I was just telling Anka that I'm going through like my own website rebranding. So like, there's no such thing as like the About Katie page right now. So yeah, I mean, like all of this that we've been talking about is the story, and it's this amalgamation of like, I grew up in a very close family of 6 kids, and I was an athlete growing up. I'm a writer. I've always been very, very connected to this idea of like really wanting to enliven women. I don't know where that came. Actually, I do know where that came from. My father was a feminist, and, he came back from he was taking like Feminism 101 one day, and I was about 12 years old, and he came back and said randomly to me, you don't need to rely on a man to bring home the bacon. You go out there and make your own bacon. And like that anchored something big time in me. Right. And it's just all of this, like the experience that I had with our local community, that really is a part of this whole piece of me that loves the connection. Like I see the difference it makes when entrepreneurs really get to connect and get to feel like, oh, you get it. Oh my God, you get it. You get what that feels like and what this experience is like, because this entrepreneurial journey is not like any other that you will ever experience. And so I love like all of those pieces play into how I show up, like I'm super real and authentic, like, which is why I'm totally here without makeup and in my workout clothes. And Anka's lucky that I took my hair down from a ponytail, because I don't like, I should say, I'm very in tune with, it's a very big value of mine to be connected and to be approachable and to feel like identifiable. Like somebody can see me and say like, oh yeah, dude, if she had that, if she can show up without makeup on a Facebook Live or a podcast, okay, cool. Like that gives them a little bit more like a little bit more permission to be themselves. So like, it's a big mission for me. Like just keep on showing up as myself, I ain't pretty. Like I ain't like, there's no such thing called perfect in my life. And, I also strive a lot, like I'm constantly on the move, and I identify a lot of my, yuck along the way. So.
Yeah. We probably made it easier for you to like own your big story, because it's not one story, though in marketing we tend to like tell the same story over and over again. So like, oh, I started poor and then I grew my social condition and so on and so forth. You were mentioning success several times, but I want to know what success looks like for you, for Biz Women Rock, and also for you personally. And
yes. Great question. Yes, because success looks like whatever you want it to look like. So, so success for me looks like I am living joyfully in all areas of my life. And what that means, practically speaking, is that at least right now at this point in my life, that, that someday soon that will mean a 7-figure or 8-figure business for Biz Women Rock, because I see that somebody said to me one time, she was quoting somebody else on my podcast. She said, the new definition of a millionaire is somebody who impacts 1 million people. Mm-hmm. And that's where my money mindset comes from, which is like, the more women I touch and that I impact and that I raise up and that I bring together, the more money I make. And there's no shame in that. Like, that's awesome. Because that means the more money I can give and the more money I can pour into that. So, for me, success looks like more and more women are stepping into their unique selves and really living into the business that they want to design, not a business that needs to be anyone else's definition of success. More and more women are stepping into feeling super confident about who they are versus so much of the self-doubt that we all feel. You know, like, I really am I'm wanting to be the eradicator of that, even though I know that, you know, it's here and it exists, but I want to give women the tools to like get past all that crap fast. Because we have so much light to give to this world. And I just kind of use the vehicle of business as one way because I'm so passionate about business, but like, you know, that really spans across so many other things. Success for me looks like, you know, really thriving relationship with my husband. We are constantly doing relationship work. We really are both big dreamers. We are both big into like, we get to create our own story of what love looks like. And so we, you know, according to my schedule and my values, like we have a date night at least once a week. Yeah, like we make time for each other in that way to constantly grow with each other. Success for me looks like being present and purposeful with my time with my daughter and any kids that we might have in the future. And then constantly seeing my family. My family is out in Arizona, the majority of them. And so like, you know, like how can I show up to see them more often? But it's just abundance and joy in all those areas of my life.
Yeah, I love that. I love how it combines, right? Like you started with the money thing, and I actually have a question about that. I know that many of us, when we are starting and throughout our entrepreneurial journey, we have a lot of money issues because we have a certain mindset built around money. So I'm curious, did you have any limiting beliefs about what you could achieve and how much you were worth, and how did you debunk that?
Yes, I'll tell you a very real story. In the very beginnings of our local company, as you remember, I had quit my job. So I had, that company was only about 9 months in when I decided to quit my job. So it was a startup company. So it was keeping the doors open barely. And like, we were even sort of like, we were working to continue keeping the doors open for the business. So I quit my job and all of a sudden I had zero income coming in. My husband was full-time in this business, so he did not have any income coming in. So literally for probably the first 2 or 3 years of that business, we lived off of my savings and my credit cards and like any little, what can we write off in the company? And like I remember we would take vacations because that was always a value of ours, but like we would bring all of our food with us so that we didn't have to actually pay for food when we went anywhere. And we would stay in the crappiest hotels or maybe even stay in our car. Like, you know, like you don't even think about that stuff. So, but I remember one moment, I don't remember what year this was, but it was about 2 or 3 years into that business that I had racked up all this credit card debt that I was paying minimums on. The only thing I had to pay cash with was my mortgage every month. And so I guarded that like crazy. And one day I looked at my bank account and I had 2 months worth of mortgage left. And I was like, oh crap. That's very real. And there was no plans for cash coming in any other way. And so, the short story is that one of the biggest tools that helped me was that I happened to go to a Tony Robbins event at that time. A friend had a free ticket and he brought me in. And I went to Unleash the Power Within, and it was transformative on many levels in my life, but specifically with money. It really identified that I had been living in a lack mentality. I had really been living in a mindset of there's not enough and there's only so much. And literally I would show up to every single work day thinking like, gotta hustle so hard because we need to bring in money because we have 2 months worth of cash left. Like literally that's how I approached each day. So what do you think I got every single day? Because when I was putting that energy out, that's what I kept getting back. People not renewing and, you know, this thing not selling out. And so very quickly, within a weekend after that event, I immediately saw, okay, we live in a world of abundance, and more so than just knowing that, because like, okay, we all say those words, we see those everywhere. I got it. Like I literally got it. And I just showed up and I started practicing gratitude for what we had. And one real weird tool that actually helps me a lot whenever I find myself in moments of scarcity with money is I actually go to the worst case scenario, and I go to, okay, so what happens if I can't pay the mortgage on month 3? What happens? I literally follow that scene down to, okay, well, I have friends who would probably take us in for a while. Worst case scenario, like we could go back home and live with mom and dad, and we'd be okay. We would be okay is ultimately what I would come up with. And that would allow me to be like, oh, okay. Well, then why am I wasting all this energy being so stressed out over this? Let me get back into the space of going and creating and going and giving. And so I'm not going to tell you that it was a night and day shift in one day, but like it was a massive shift that I continue to practice and continue to implement that mindset shift into their money is everywhere. And we just have to continue showing up, believing and believing and believing. And thank God my husband is already in that mindset. He was, he's been an entrepreneur since he was a young kid. So he learned that lesson a lot earlier than I did. So, he was on board with it. And just, it's interesting. The moment that I went to that workshop, the moment I went to Tony Robbins, and the moment that mindset shift happened, we kind of the floodgates started opening with the financials of the business. And that allowed us to start paying ourselves. And it just happened. And I still experience it with Biz Women Rock. I put a lot of attention this past year into money mindset and being able to identify when I hit those blocks and when I hit those upper limits of like, oh, I can only make this much, or, somebody who, in order for me to make more money, I have to work more time. Like, good God, I have all of those. And I continue to just work on them, knowing that they're just kind of a part of this.
Yeah. I love that. I love Tony Robbins. Like whenever I hear his name, I just go crazy.
Yeah, I love him too.
Yeah, he's like, oh my God, he's creating so much value and so much impact. And I love how for you, it was not magic, like it didn't happen from one day to another, but basically you can identify the moment when you like removed or committed to letting go of this scarcity mentality and shifting into abundance and gratitude. And I love gratitude because it's the basis for abundance.
Yeah, it's the basis for everything. I'll give you one practical example again of how I practice this today. So I have masterminds. At this moment, I have 2 masterminds that I'm filling, right? And so I had a specific goal, and I just closed down applications yesterday. 3 days ago, I was only half full. And I had been marketing like crazy. Like I was like, oh God, putting so much energy out there, right? And I just kept telling myself, like I started getting into the mindset of like, okay, well, maybe this is just going to be one group, or maybe this is just going to be a smaller group or whatever. Well, it's better than last time or whatever. It's progress. And I was like, no, I'm filling these spots I'm holding these spaces for the perfect person who's going to totally get on fire with these. And sure enough, like I sent out the last email that said like, hey, applications closed down today. And boom, I have, I think the other half that aren't filled quite yet, but have the potential to fill like immediately, just like that. And I'm like, okay, I'm just believing. Like, I just got to keep on believing because it happens,
Yeah. I love that. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So Tony Robbins is one of your inspirations. Whom else?
Oh man. Elizabeth Gilbert. She is Eat, Pray, Love, the author of Eat, Pray, Love. Most recently, for all of you aspiring and current entrepreneurs, Big Magic was her most recent book that was just mind-blowing for anyone who is a creative in any way, shape, or form. And I would consider this like for any entrepreneur. And so I just love her. I love what she's about. I love how authentically she shares, like how she shares and how she writes I identify with. That's like exactly how I love showing up. And I feel like sharing so honestly and openly is what allows people to connect with the realness and then see the hope on the other side of that and feel inspired by that. I'm not going to inspire anyone if I just, show all the flashy stuff and don't show like the real, I feel like that's all fake. So I love and honor her for her real journey and her willingness to share that all the time. Oh my goodness. so many people. Gary Vaynerchuk, I really love. He's super masculine. Like, I don't necessarily love the term hustle. I don't really believe in hustle. And I know he preaches about that all the time, but I do love and respect and honor him for him showing up and being so passionate about sharing about, like, you know, be a person of value. Like, that's really ultimately what he's constantly doing. And like, stop living your life for other people. Like, I really love that message over and over again. Oprah, of course, like, and literally I could name off like thousands of other women who are sort of not yet at the Oprah status, but are really like making a difference in people's lives, in their local community, in their very specialized communities. Like, they are providing great content. They are being people who are giving value to the world, like literally thousands of those women.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Katie. It was like really enriching, and I would like to share with everything who is watching and the fact that they can still come on board for your mastermind on Biz Women Rock.
So applications closed yesterday. However, and I will say this too. So there's a requirement for the masterminds to apply, which is like, you have to have been in business for a while already. And you have to have a business model that you are, for the most part, making money on, and you just really want to kind of get to that next level. And so for you, because this is live, so for today, this is on this particular day, I will accept applications from here on out. So you can go ahead and put that link there. So I would be more than happy to talk to anyone who's been watching.
Great, cool. Thank you very much. So they can find you on Biz Women Rock, your website, and then on Facebook at Biz Women Rock, on Twitter, which is Biz_Women Rock, and in your group, right? So
yes, ma'am.
5,000 women entrepreneur, ambitious women entrepreneur.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Katie. Is there anything that I forgot to mention?
No, just thank you so much for having this show and just creating this space for people to be able to learn. I really believe that these interviews, these conversations, like, these end up being so instrumental in like how, like, what next move we decide to make. So I'm just so appreciative that you have me here, and just really grateful that you've even built this entire community. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm also really, really grateful. So thank you, everybody who has been watching us, and have a happy day.